PLTS is here from Berkeley, California.
Welcome.
Mark is here from Columbia Seminary.
Hi, Mark.
Hey.
Is Proctor on the call with us right now? We had Monica earlier. Not right now, okay.
Yes, Monica's still here.
Okay, hi, Monica.
Hi.
And we have two other people here from our green team, Jennifer Madran and Kaylin Adams.
Great.
Let me see if I can get some more people. Oh, just one person just asked a question.
Oh, Sabrina Smith is on from Proctor, looks like.
So Sarah, I wonder, to be mindful of everyone's time, I wonder if we could start with 8.1 with Laurel, and maybe give Laurel a second to prepare. But we can have Laurel do her section on 8.1, and then at 3:25 move to Proctor's presentation.
I think that sounds like a good plan. Laurel, you good with that to start in just a few minutes? And right now I'll go ahead and for those that just jumped on, Laurel Kearns is wearing about 3 hats on this phone call. Laurel, many of you know, is the co-founder of the Green Seminary Initiative, which is now 10 years in existence. And she's also the team leader for the Green Team at Drew Theological School, which is in the 2nd cohort of schools in the certification process. And today, the 3rd hat is that she is our expert/mentor that's going to guide us through a conversation focusing on 8.1 of the standards, which is listed as Theology and Ecology. In the chat feature, that's where we would like for you to submit any questions that you have pertaining to 8.1 that we can discuss with Laurel during this portion. And then in the second half of the call, we want to be able to facilitate a conversation between all of your schools on whatever sections you would like to get some ideas from, share, let's learn together, encourage one another, and celebrate our successes along the way. We're going to do this monthly cohort gathering call every last Wednesday of the month. So this is something that we're excited about in getting our schools not to be working separately, but working together, because none of us are alone in this process, but often we feel very alone. So I think we'll go ahead and get started, Laurel, if you're ready.
First, as one of the dreamers of this program, I just can't tell you how exciting it is to hear who all's on the call and to see your faces and to just think that here we are with 3 cohorts now. And that is really exciting. And I've been reading, sort of some of what the 1st cohort is already doing. And certainly as part of the 2nd cohort, we're working on our action plan. What I wanted to start off just sort of saying is, hopefully everyone noticed that in trying to write these, we tried to build a very expansive definition of what it means to include theology and ecology in the curriculum. And certainly I think in some of the responses I've seen, people are really taking that it's the idea is to get all through the curriculum. And so wherever are the places where there's the most room already, the most receptivity is important. And I found here at Drew that one of the things I really needed to do was to sort of write out in detail all of the ways I could think of that my colleagues might be bringing in a unit in their classes. And we did a survey monkey, just taking all of the different guidelines and sort of saying, how do you, what do you do in your class? And we just took each one of these segments and asked folks, what are you doing? How does it relate? How much do you do? And that gave us a good profile, I think, of more faculty doing something than we might have guessed. So I want to encourage folks to do that. But part of that also is making sure, sometimes I at least find that colleagues who don't work in some of these areas have a much more narrow definition of it than I might. And so part of my job is to help them see all of the ways that this could fit into their courses or something. At Drew, we are going through a complete curriculum revision with eco-justice as one of 4 themes that is supposed to run throughout the curriculum. So this is a very active process for us, of people who have just relied on others on the faculty to do this work, to start thinking about how to bring it in their own. I also wanted to just sort of, for those of you who already are working on this in your faculties, to ask you just a question about, what have you found are the roadblocks or the barriers? And I think what I've found here, and what we anticipated in designing the website, is that a lot of folks don't know what resources are there. They don't feel like they have the criteria to choose something that might work in their class. They don't feel like they have the time to bring in something. And so both what I've seen is the faculty on our green team, part of our role is to help others with that. And we're lucky at Drew, we've got a pretty good depth in a variety of areas. But also just the website is designed to help you find stuff, because I think this is the kind of situation, especially when you're trying to maybe meet requirement B, ecological concerns are integrated substantially in at least one required course, or you're doing the electives where you're trying to get some additional content, figuring out ways to make the barrier lower so that there's feelings of success, and to sort of affirm where people, just sitting down and seeing where they see their work coming in, helping them realize they may know more than they think they know. There's so many edited volumes and things out there now. So those are just some of the initial thoughts that I had, and recognize that the field study experience, I know some of your schools already are really taking advantage of this, and certainly something like IPLs or Green Faith or Faith in Place, Earth Ministry, these groups around the country that have worked with congregations may know of congregations that even would be willing long distance to mentor with someone. But I think pretty much where everyone's located, there are congregations and groups out there where you could have a student placed, or a mentorship or internship. And so that's a real rich possibility, because then those students bring that back into all their classes. So one of the ways this happens is the students then in other classes saying, well, this relates to what I was learning over here. And so empower your students to feel like they can help bring content into classes. Most people now that we have online library offerings, there's so much out there. Oxford Books has got a tremendous amount of ebooks now. And so I think the campus library, making sure faculty and students know what's there, even especially those kind of easily accessible journals and ebooks, is a pretty rich and easy thing to do in terms of these electives. And I'm excited to hear just from some of you who really have pairings with universities where students can take environmental history, they can take a food course, they can take an environmental science course, law, all sorts of things. I think MTSO is offering an interesting model in that they partner with Ohio State, even though they aren't, you know, on the same campus like Drew. The Theology School is on the campus of Drew University. They're finding partner schools where students could do more. So not wanting to take up too much of my time, I want to just stop there and just hear from people what their experiences are. Maybe start off with either of the requirement A, the offers at least one elective course. That one is often pretty easy in that you can, often we could help you get an adjunct or something if you don't already have one identified. But then also those of you who are working on that requirement B of getting it into a required course. So just wanted to hear people's experiences and read some of the chat that's coming in. Austin Kersley has a field ed student doing an environmentally related field site virtually. So we could go to Austin and just learn how you're doing it, and then how we can maybe share that model. And I see that Abby's already agreed to share the Survey Monkey, which she designed. So that'll be easy. But I found it really useful, and I've certainly been able to take it to faculty meetings and stuff.
Got something from Columbia there for you. At Columbia Theological Seminary, they have the problem of students who, between our requirements and their denominational requirements, have very few electives available to them. Do other institutions have this same problem? And if so, how are you dealing with it? Thanks, Mark.
Mark, I'll answer, since I'm in a Methodist institution, that yes, the same problem. One of the things to do is, I tried for a while to do 1.5 credit courses. In other words, our courses are 3 credits long. But if I could offer a 1.5 credit course, I often got people who would never feel like they had the time to do a whole 3 credit course. And that was really wonderful because folks would take a risk. They didn't have to already be interested. They could just sort of do it out of curiosity. It could be, sometimes I would do an intensive in relation to a lecture that was coming. And so the students would have a chance to be with that lecture. They would have read a lot in preparation. And then I would continue to work with them. I would do things on smaller topics like animals. That brought in a whole array of folks who never would have come in if I called it ecology. I did a religion and science related to a conference. I've done sort of religion and food. I first tried that out as a half course, 1.5 credits. So that's one way to start working that in. And then as more students have experiences of those electives, it becomes more desirable.
Great.
But I think you also have to have your folks who are teaching what it means to lead a church, integrating it so that then the students want the elective to find out how to do it better.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Laurel.
Others in your experience? How does everyone feel like they've got a required course that this is anchored in? People can unmute their mics if they want to talk.
Laurel, this is Mary Elizabeth. Oh, wait a minute. It's in 2 places. Sorry. Sorry. Can you hang that one up? We'll do it from my computer. Hang up, yeah. Okay.
Great to see you.
There we go.
University.
We had the sound coming through the phone and the pictures on the screen. Mary Elizabeth at BU.
we've changed our curriculum a few years ago to give more flexibility to it. And we do have some tracks in the MDiv, for example, like Community and Global Engagement track, which ecological courses fit requirements. We also have tried to build in some of our regular courses that fit, like core theology requirement or core ethics requirement, that include, that focus largely on an ecological emphasis. And we also at the same time have been doing the kind of thing Laurel's talking about in terms of one 2-unit courses. So we really would like to develop that more, because we've discovered students like it, and we've not done much of it yet, and we want to do more of that. But we're playing around with the same issues that everybody else has already named.
Very good.
And I brought that up because I don't know if your institutions like mine, you've got to have a certain enrollment for a course to go. And so I used those smaller credit courses to help build up some of that demand. I'm lucky that I teach one of the required courses, and it's been anchored in that course for 20 some odd years. So that also generates folks, and we have a wonderful worship liturgist, Heather Elkins, that comes out of, and we have a theologian. But thinking of schools that this is just starting a little bit more, that was one idea, is you've got to, like you said, Mary Elizabeth, it creates demand for more. And it makes, I'm always trying to think of how to make the access barrier lowest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's the easiest way to get students coming in on something that then leads? Because some of those folks that came in on religion and animals then ended up taking quite a few courses for me and saying, I never would have thought of the connection. I just knew that I, you know, really loved animals.
If the curriculum requires something like a cross-cultural or immersion course, that is also another way to come at that, because you can put students in the middle of both place and people that are resources beyond the seminary. We are, for example, the Appalachian Studies. West Virginia encompasses so many of those issues, gas, oil, lumber, you name it. And then Native American people in place class, deeply shaped by those issues. So, if schools are requiring something like that, that is also a place to interact.
Thank you, Heather.
So wonderful. I just said, like Heather Elkins, and she appeared. I can't see who all's on the call, yes. So I didn't know whether you were or not.
Yes,
so.
yes, here.
And of course, anchoring it in chapel then makes students want more of that in their worship and preaching classes.
Mm-hmm.
I know at Columbia, one of the things that we deal with is that in any number of disciplines, we don't have a required course, we have a distributional requirement. And so, for instance, we have a DR in ethics, which means students have to take at least one course in ethics from within a prescribed set. Some of those courses that we teach, that my colleague Dr. Riggs and I teach, have an environmental component. Some of them don't, just because we kind of have different themes to attract different people. So that's a quasi-requirement for us, because they have to take it and they're likely to get it, but it's not that we're going to hit 100% of people. The other thing we have is a set of integrative courses, one per year, and we, depending on who's teaching it, we often fit environmental stuff into those integrative courses. But again, then you're at kind of the interests and foci of the teaching team that are in place. So we don't have a foolproof way of guaranteeing that all of our students have significant exposure, but we try and, you know, hit in enough little places that it's likely that they will have hit it before they leave.
Yeah, I think I'll be glad to report from the front of what it means for, you know, we have undertaken this commitment that all of we are going away from a certain kind of required course to a variety of things. But if all of those courses are going to have some kind of eco-justice content, we'll report back. How you start doing that across. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
Great. Any other questions or suggestions on this 8.1 section of the standards before we move into hearing from Proctor on how their experience with the certification process has been? This is something that we're going to do every month, is ask one school to tell a little bit of their story. And next year we'll hear from Drew about how their experience is. So, but we've asked to hear from Proctor, as well as we've had them submit a blog entry on our website. So we appreciate that. So anything else under 8.1?
I just want to
have a
say,
question.
go ahead, Mary.
Question if there's time.
Sure.
We're challenged here at BU with this still being related as a white person's issue. So we do have people from different ethnic and cultural communities on our team, but do you have any ideas about how to broaden the scope so that dealing with ecological justice is seen as something that can be really, really important to all people?
I'm certainly glad to offer some of the resources that I do. I think here at Drew, it does reach across, and I just am teaching a PhD course where we just did a whole unit on eco-womanism, and just the resources there are tremendous now. And there's lots and lots coming out. So I'm glad to share some bibliography. But what you're being with us, Mary Elizabeth and Mark, sort of made me think about is it's not just content, it's how we teach. And this topic really requires teaching differently. And I think it requires bringing in our own sort of processes of putting more and more together, realizing a bigger and bigger vision of this that invites students in. I'm really clear that students come into this topic from a variety of ways, and the point is to get them on the path to thinking more. And so I do a lot of work on environmental justice, linking it with health issues, linking it with climate change, who's disproportionately impacted. And I also, since I'm a sociologist, I can use the statistics that say in the United States, the most concerned groups over climate change are Black Protestants and Hispanic Catholics. And I think that makes a difference for students when they realize that, you know, there are people in their own communities, and certainly the Green the Church movement is just doing tremendous stuff. Proctor had that incredible conference. And I'm sure Proctor has some great resources to offer on this too. So I love the fact that we're going to be sort of sharing things. I see Tim is there with Garrett looking in, and maybe others have some thoughts on that. But I just want to say we should be listening to those folks who teach education also, because students really pay attention if we are saying one thing and doing another.
Very good. Thank you. Faith Harris, are you on the call?
I am here.
Hey.
I couldn't figure out how to make hear you, so I finally got that straight. So I apologize. I was there for a long time, but I couldn't hear anybody, and no one could hear me. So
well. Well, glad you could join us. We've had some, I don't know at what point you jumped onto the call. We've had some good conversation here around the 8.1 section of the standards. And like I mentioned to the group, each month we're going to ask for a different school. Today it's your turn to tell a little bit about your story. How has your community's experience been so far in the certification process? Proctor is part of the pilot cohort with 3 other schools. So we'd like to hear a little bit about Proctor, and you may have some questions for Faith and her team. So we'd like to hear from you, Faith.
Well, I guess I just want to give a synopsis of our experience. We started as the, one of the schools in the cohort, and our audit went very smoothly because we really didn't have any objections or concerns or glitches with the audit. We were able to dispatch students and various green team members to learn, to answer and to kind of do the analysis and critique and observation and interview folks so that we could do complete the audit. So that has been, fairly smooth process, and I think it was a learning process for our green team because everyone didn't start on the same page. It kind of started. We started and applied for the certification process and program because of a passion that I had, that I brought to the dean, and I was able to invite others who didn't necessarily have the same level of information, but were curious and interested. So that's how we started. But our process has been, so it's been smooth in that sense. We have a new dean, and we have had some, ebb and flow as far as moving forward. As the dean has asked for us to do, for the faculty to do an entire curriculum review, and we're in the midst of reviewing and designing a new curriculum. So, and as we're doing that, we're able to have conversations that are going to that are bearing upon conversations about our relationship to Green Seminary Initiative and the Green Team work that are bearing upon hopefully our outcomes regarding the curriculum review. So all of that is going on simultaneously, which is it's both positive, and it's also, there are some drawbacks because it kind of slows our progress. In the meantime, we work collaboratively with a number of community organizations, Sierra Club, Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So we have developed relationships in the community that help us with our work. For instance, the elective course that we do, we bring in representatives from all those organizations to do, partial lectures, to participate in that way, and helping students to learn what's available in the community, resources that are available in the community. So currently, we were able to, it was in the works before we started the Green Seminary Initiative, but we planned and hosted a conference on green caring for creation last May. And that was a good start, good foundation for creating and exposing students who would ordinarily not gravitate to an elective course that way. So that we've been slowly, I think, creating changing and transforming the ethos of the school to have students are thinking of this as part of their understanding of what it means to be a faithful people. So I think that all of this is working together. I think, not necessarily at the pace that we'd like it, but we are moving forward. We have had 2 students who have used it as their field education, their experience on the Green Team and the work that they've done on the Green Team. And as we continue, we hope to continue to build that and continue that partnership with the field education director. We have had already this year, we've had 3 occasions where through our chapel services and through planned events where we've had dialogue on environmental justice, ecology, and those have all gone very well. So we're looking now, as I said earlier, we're reviewing our curriculum, and so we appear to be moving toward expanding the opportunities for students to be exposed to and to deepen their understanding through not just through electives, but through the way that we embed the environmental and ecological concerns in the coursework, particularly theology and ethics, but also in Christian education and the homiletics courses. So we have the elective course that we've taught. It was introduced in our it's an introductory course that all the students take. It's introduction to church and its ministry. It's a first level, first term course, and we have introduced the themes in that course also. So it's slowly moving throughout the faculty where they're beginning to incorporate themes on their own into their coursework. So overall, I'd say we're making good progress. It's been just been a revitalizing experience for conversations around our relationship as a seminary to the work of the community and the work of not just preparing people for specific ministry roles, but what is our relationship to the community that surrounds us and or where we're embedded or located, and what's our responsibility as far as not just educating the people that come through our doors and sign up and register, but how do we raise understanding and conversation with others. So with the elective course, for instance, we also have the issue of if you don't have enough people to register, can the class, can we, go forward with the class? But one of the ways we've addressed that is open it up to the community at a much lower cost. So we're giving people in the community opportunity to take the course, but they can audit it and they can take it for a much more reasonable, actually for a nominal fee, and that's helped to create more interest among students also. So I think we have more work to do, but we are moving forward. I think I'm pleased with the efforts that we've made and the progress we've made.
That's terrific. We talk all the time about how we envision this being a transformative experience for our seminary communities. And so it's wonderful to hear words like revitalizing.
Yeah.
That's exciting. One of the questions was, are there videotaped parts of the best practices conference that Proctor held last May? Do you know?
Yes, we do have some video, and we may even have some audio. But yes, the entire conference wasn't videoed, but we do have some. So there are some things that are available. Yes.
Good.
And actually, I haven't had a follow-up conversation yet, but the dean just recently suggested that he wanted to do a follow-up this May also to the conference, just a one-day conversation and experience. So we'll be working on that. And there are a number of other ways that we since developing or becoming part of the and participating in the Green Seminary Initiative, we also signed an MOU with Green the Church, and so we hope to be able to be a site to for ministers and persons who have a deeper interest to engage Virginia Union for those resources. So we're working on that also. And I wanted to respond to someone said something about how do you make the help persons of color, and particularly African Americans and maybe even other groups, understand that this is not a white issue per se. And I think we all struggle with that same issue, even in a context where, where the faculty are people of color also and are raising these issues. And I think we all need to be thinking of language and the way we use our language, and maybe finding new ways to language this dialogue and this issue. I think one of the challenges that I hear from students is, when their eyes glaze over when you start using words like ecology and environmental science and that kind of thing, because their question is, what does this have to do with, preparing for ministry? So, I have found that there is still a challenge there, and just finding the right language is still part of something we have to, come to grips with, and find language that will speak to, every community.
Very good. I would ask people to continue to submit questions on anything via the chat feature. If you have any questions or comments to make to Faith, now would be a good time for that.
I also wanted to say Monica Flippin is on the line also, and she's one of our Green Team members, a student, and she's doing it as a field education, so as part of her field education requirements. So if anyone wanted to ask her questions, or if she wanted to make a statement.
Great. Monica, are you there?
I'm there.
Was that a question from someone? Well,
actually, yes. I wanted to say, just listening to what Faith was saying, this is Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler, Union Presbyterian Seminary, Charlotte, that one of the problems I imagine with the African American community and other communities of color is when you have been disempowered for so long, you have such a vast responsibility for the entire world is a difficult thing to imagine. So I think in part, one of the things that we can begin to do as a seminary is to begin to re-empower people of color, helping us to recognize the fullness of our responsibility for, obligation to the entirety of the world, that this is not a white person's world, hence this is not a white person's issue, might be something to bring to the forefront. But thank you for that time.
Very good. Thank you, Rodney.
Yeah, thanks, Rodney. That's great.
I just want to say the folks connected with Green the Church are incredible. I've heard them preach. I've met a lot of them, and I think that's really important for our students to meet the folks who are out there really doing something. A lot of the folks I talk to, recognizing how health issues and disproportionate impact is part of it, but I want to caution all of us to not reduce sort of people of color engagement with the environment to only environmental justice issues. If you haven't read Carolyn Finney's book, Black Faces and White Spaces, or listen to her do a TED Talk or something, that's a really important one. I think the recent stuff, Worldviews did a whole journal edition on eco-womanist voices, and that was really important, just the richness there. So I think what's exciting is that there's so many people within, the Korean American or the Asian American community, with lots of interesting things really happening among Latinos, Latinx. So part of it is really connecting those resources with your students, so they recognize that a lot of people are involved in this. And I'm fortunate here. We are shoreline communities. We're hit by climate change. We are incredibly, our students are often in issues extremely impacted by air pollution and all of the things that brings in. So I think when students realize the issue is in their congregation already, and the issue is going to be before their congregation, because congregations are going to be first responders. And we just have to look at the last year to see how many different parts of the nation experience some kind of extreme weather. I know our students want to know better how to be equipped and to respond.
Yeah, I think also one of the important ways that I like to talk to students and introduce to students early on in the course is recognition of the historical connections that people of color have had to the land. As indigenous folk and as persons who have made their living from the land. And so, I think that's a good beginning place also, to recognize that most of our grandparents and, great grandparents had, lived on farms, had gardens, had relationship to what was going on in the, in their surroundings and soil and in the woods. And so they hunted. There were connections there that I think have been lost maybe in the last generation or so, that we can remind people. And I found that when we start having those conversations, most of the students either have had experiences with grandparents or uncles or someone who was a gardener or who was a a lover of the environment and of nature, and in some way had instilled some of that in them. So and it's kind of those are connections that restore a positive response to environmental and eco issues. So I think that's another way to do it.
Great. Mark Douglas just commented that he needs to get to another commitment, but wanted to remind you all of the symposium that is going to be on the campus at Columbia Theological Seminary in late March. And Abby, I think, has offered the link to that, and Laurel will be one of the keynotes. So hope that some of you can join us for that. Shall we?
Tim Van Meter from MTSO.
And Tim, right.
But it's really an incredible lineup they put together.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. This is an opportunity before we close to share with the group, are there any particular challenges? What are the most difficult challenges that your team is facing as it pertains to these standards? This call is a chance for us to share challenges and ideas together, and the Facebook group that we mentioned earlier in the call is a way that we can lift up challenges, concerns, and offer ideas to help one another. So I would, now's a good time to jump in the chat box and offer, lift up, what's the most, everybody's got challenges. So, what are the particular challenges that your team is facing in either of the 5 focus areas? And while you're thinking of those, Again, the Green Team Cohort Group Seminary Environmental Certification Program. Too long of a name, but that's the name of our closed Facebook group that is set up specifically for you. It's a closed group, which means anybody that's on Facebook can find it, but you need to ask to join, and we're limiting it to Green Team members like yourself. So this is not the open Facebook page. Anybody can jump on it. We have that, and that serves its own purpose. But we really want to encourage this type of conversation that we're having today so that you can help one another along the way. Abby, while we're waiting on questions or concerns, do you want to tell people what we're going to do next month? We may have lost her. Next month, we'll be having Jen Ayers with us as our expert mentor with a focused conversation on 8.2, which is faculty development. There you are.
Will look pretty similar to this month, except we'll be focused on.
I think this says the bandwidth is low, so you may be having trouble with your connection.
I can hear you, but I obviously can't speak. So go ahead and cover up for me, and thank you. And several people in the chat box have asked for the Facebook link again, so I'm going to get that.
Great. Yeah, thanks for giving us that link so that everybody who is on Facebook can be a part of that group, and we can continue this conversation. But next month, we'll have Jen Ayers with us, and we'll have a focused conversation, particularly on 8.2 faculty development, which ties in, obviously, to 8.1. Laurel, do you have anything to lift up in the area of 8.2 that you'd like to connect to some of the previous comments that you made earlier?
Sarah asked that because I said I wanted to go there because I wanted to hear what folks were doing. And so you could hear how I talked a little bit about that, about how to make it easier for our colleagues to move into this somewhat, even if, sometimes it's guest lecturing. I think another way, I'm increasingly convinced of the really pedagogical value of TED Talks and things like that. And so one thing we can do is also make those kind of resources available to our colleagues. And I know my colleagues might get tired sometimes because I'll come across and I'll say, gee, this might work well, or something, but then they get to listen to it, or I point them to websites with resources and ideas. So that kind of, your Green Team can be doing that kind of faculty development. But I am eager to hear. I know MTSO, I think, has a grant to work on this further with all of their faculty. Our faculty, I'm sort of one of the resource persons, but you heard Heather, we've got quite a few. So it is really important because I think all of our colleagues have tremendous demands on their time right now in the world of theological education, and our students do too. And the other thing just to keep in mind is that at the AAR, there is usually a Friday workshop that's put on by the Religion and Ecology group that is very directly aimed at this it rotates through a variety of topics, but what are the resources out there? How can we help you? Just some incredible young scholars. I was thinking in reference to what Faith was saying, Christopher Carter, really wonderful chapter on, he works a lot on on food, animals, but also there's so much coming out about gardening and the traditions. Melanie Harris's book really works well in that. I'll be glad to share that Christopher Carter chapter that my class found really engaging, and that book isn't quite out yet. But just to say, think broadly in terms of the kind of faculty development. It doesn't have to be, these are the books, these are the articles you should read. But my students at least love to have a video or a TED Talk or something to listen to while they're commuting, while they're washing dishes, whatever. I don't place too high a demands. I just want to get them to listen and engage.
Great. Chris at MTSO, you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on there in faculty development? You mentioned it in the chat box.
Yeah, so it's definitely still being developed, but I'll get a little blurb from Tim Van Meter and send that out. So at least as we have the bare bones, and then obviously once we go through it, we'll be able to kind of see what worked and didn't work and how folks are thinking about it differently, hopefully, to wrap things into their teaching and curriculum. I also mentioned that Christopher Carter is teaching a course here this summer. We're going to do a 1-week intensive with him and a 1-week intensive with Tim on 2 different topics, but both eco-focused. So we would love any auditors or outside creditors, and we'll get that info out as soon as we have it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dave Jensen, if you're still with us, can you tell us about Entrust?
So I just became aware of this recently, but Entrust, which is kind of this umbrella organization for Board of Trustees and Administration and Theological Education. They made aware, if you go to their website, they have small grants available for, innovation in theological education. And we are going to apply for one in relation to some of our GSI initiatives. So I just want folks to be aware of that, because, to be honest, some of the challenges for us, and I imagine for many schools, are the financial ones. How, like with food service, for example, we want to move toward more sustainable, food sourcing. That involves some cost. Any eco-friendly enhancements to the physical plant involve cost. So sometimes it's that initial cost that is a barrier to things that you want to do, and if there are some outside sources that can help out with that, I think that's a good thing.
Very good.
And I wanted to say that the 6 conferences that are being put on, one every semester around the country, MTSO did last fall, and you just heard that Columbia is doing this spring. Those are tremendous faculty development opportunities. And there are some faculties flying your folks in, and there's some help for that. So they can be there if it's, we can't hold them in every region of the country. And some folks don't want to wait till one gets to their region of the country. But I just want to lift those up because they're just tremendous. And I think it really helps faculty just meeting other faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens at the pre-AAR thing. And also when the Green Seminary Initiative, always have something at AAR, and that's another place where we watched people really make connections. And that kind of faculty development, just, you've got someone to reach out to and say, what are you teaching in this, is really important.
Mm. Well, I am mindful of our time, and this hour has been wonderful. We look forward to having this conversation again next month at this time. This call has been recorded so that we can share it with all of your team members, and we'll do that each month. Again, next month we'll be having Jen Ayers with us, leading us in a conversation particularly on faculty development. So if you have specific questions on that area, feel free to email it to us ahead of time. That's fine. Obviously, we can do it, in the moment via the chat feature. But let's keep the communication lines open. If you're on Facebook, please join the closed group that is set up to continue this conversation as it's needed between these green teams, so that we can have some good cross-pollination of ideas and encouragement and helping each other out along the way. We're all at different stages of this process, but all of us have strengths to offer to one another. And again, we're not alone. You are not alone. You're no longer the lone champion at your institution, and you're no longer should feel like the only school that is working on this. So, Laurel, we're so grateful for your time today, and grateful that you helped to get this started 10 years ago. So, I know that this should be very satisfying to you.
Y'all are my baby.
Very good.
Good timing, since the human ones and the feline ones no longer live at the house.
Well, thanks everyone, and we'll continue the conversation via email and Facebook, and we'll see you again next month.
Thanks, everyone.